I just wanted a warm weekend with my son. Instead, my daughter-in-law was on the phone, demanding the hotel cancel my room for her important family. I walked into the lobby just as the receptionist looked at me like I was a car crash in progress. The phone was on speaker. "Just cancel my mother-in-law's reservation." I stood there, smiled, and the receptionist leaned in. "Follow me," he whispered. I followed, and every secret began to unravel. I am Margot Ellison. I am 62 years old, and for the last 9 years, I have been a widow. I am also the owner of the Sea Glass Haven, a boutique hotel I built from the ground up here in Harbor Point, Oregon. My feet barely made a sound on the cool slate of my own lobby when I heard her voice. "Just cancel my mother-in-law's reservation." The voice was Savannah's, my daughter-in-law, tinny and sharp, bleeding from the speakerphone on the front desk. Noah, my best receptionist, looked up. His eyes were wide, caught between professional calm and the sheer horror of seeing me, the mother-in-law in question, standing right there, luggage in hand. He winced, a silent apology. I pulled the handle of my rolling valise up, the click echoing slightly in the quiet afternoon. It was not the room. I owned the building. I had a master key to every door. It was the casual erasure, the assumption that my place in my son's life was so negligible it could be deleted with a phone call to a stranger. It was the feeling of being invaded, not my property, but my very standing. I walked straight to the desk. Noah started to stammer. "Mrs. Ellison, I held up a hand, silencing him. I looked at the caller ID on the desk phone, still glowing with Savannah's name. I pressed the end call button, cutting her off mid-sentence. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the distant ocean. I pulled my own cell from my coat pocket, dialed her number, and waited. She picked up on the second ring, her voice clipped with annoyance. "Who is this?" "It's Margot," I said, my voice perfectly level. "I'm in the lobby. You and Caleb have 20 minutes. Meet me here." I did not wait for a reply. I hung up. I turned to Noah, who still looked pale. "Noah," I said, my voice shifting from mother-in-law to owner. "Prepare the small meeting room. Coffee, lots of it. The good French roast." "Yes, ma'am." He practically sprinted from the desk. I left my luggage with him and took the stairs, not the elevator, to my private office on the second floor. It overlooked the entrance. I placed my handbag on the heavy oak desk, the one that had belonged to my late husband. I ran my hand over the worn, smooth wood. I stood at the window, watching the gravel parking lot, counting the minutes. This weekend was meant to be a celebration. The 3rd anniversary of Sea Glass Haven. I had poured everything into this place. I sent the email to Caleb 2 weeks ago. "The hotel is 3. I wrote, "Come. Let's celebrate what we build." His reply had come a day later, just 3 words, but they had felt like a victory. "I'll be there. Mum." I had reserved the presidential suite for him and Savannah, and my own usual room, the corner suite on the 3rd floor, for myself. A silver SUV turned sharply into the driveway, 19 minutes after my call. It parked crookedly, taking up 2 spots. Savannah got out first, her movements clipped and angry even from this distance. She slammed the passenger door. Caleb emerged from the driver's side. My son. He looked tired. He stood for a moment, looking at the hotel entrance, not at his wife. He followed her, but he kept his distance. He was 3 precise steps behind her. I watched them cross the parking lot. I watched Savannah's rigid shoulders and Caleb's bowed head. I knew then. This was not a scheduling mistake. This was not about a hotel room. This was a reckoning. My office was quiet. The only sound, the ticking of the antique clock on the wall. Waiting for the sound of the lobby door. The past 3 years compressed in my chest. This hotel, Seaglass Haven, was not a hobby. It was a resurrection. After my husband died, I stayed in our big family home for too long. The silence was deafening. The house we had built together, the house where I raised Caleb, had become a beautiful, suffocating mausoleum. I sold it. I sold the memories to fund a future, and I poured every cent into a patch of derelict, overgrown land overlooking the ocean. I swore I would never again beg anyone, not even my own son, for a place to belong. I, Margot Ellison, became an expert in things I never knew existed: zoning permits, occupancy taxes, the predatory commissions of online travel agencies. I learned how to analyze guest reviews and how to survive the brutal, empty quiet of the first low season when the rain lashed the windows for weeks on end. This place was built from my grief. And on the day I opened the doors 3 years ago, the day I needed him most, Caleb came. He came alone. Savannah sends her apologies, he had said, staring at the new reception desk. Not at me. She woke up with a terrible migraine. It was the first cut, sharp and deep. It was followed by 1,000 others. The dinners that were shoehorned into their schedule, lasting barely 20 minutes before their phones started buzzing with urgent messages. The Christmas visit that was capped at 30 minutes because they had other obligations at her family's estate. It was a long, systematic campaign of polite dismissals that ground a mother's heart down to dust. So I built my fortress. I designed the operating procedures myself. I set the rates based on the season, not just chaotic demand. I permanently blocked the owner's suite in the reservation system, my room. I trained my small, dedicated staff with one simple motto: warm service, firm boundaries. Harbour Point started to notice. We were only 12 rooms, but our sea-facing garden and insistence on quiet luxury earned us a 5-star review in a niche travel magazine. We were booked solid 6 months out. I also established a golden rule, one that was non-negotiable. My staff was my family. Guests, even family guests, did not get to disrespect them. No one was allowed to give orders to my team except for me or my manager. It was a simple rule of decency. But I knew, even as I wrote it into the employee handbook, it would one day become a necessary armor. This anniversary mattered. 2 weeks ago. I sent that email to Caleb. It was short, a lifeline thrown into the digital ocean. "The hotel is 3, I wrote. "Come, let's celebrate what we build." When his 3-word reply landed in my inbox, "I'll be there, Mom," I had to close my office door. I put my head on my husband's old oak desk and wept, the keyboard wet beneath my hands. It felt like the first breath of air after being underwater for years. Now, hearing the heavy glass door of the lobby swing open below, that breath felt stolen. The hope that had filled this office moments ago evaporated, replaced by the cold, familiar weight of reality. Savannah and Caleb were here, and the battle for that simple, 3-word promise was about to begin. I came down the stairs and found them standing in the middle of the lobby, a stark tableau. Savannah was scanning the space, her eyes moving over the custom millwork, the local art, the hand-woven rugs. She was not appreciating, she was assessing, judging. Caleb stood near the door, as if planning an escape, his hands jammed into his pockets, his gaze fixed on the slate floor. Noah was safely behind the desk, organizing pamphlets that did not need organizing. "Savannah? Caleb?" I said. My voice was calm, cutting through the quiet. They turned. Savannah's composed mask was already in place. Caleb just looked exhausted. "Noah has prepared the meeting room for us," I said, gesturing toward the frosted glass doors. "This way?" I led. They followed. I sat at the head of the small, polished table. Noah had, indeed, brought the coffee. It smelled strong and comforting. I did not offer any. Savannah sat opposite me, placing her designer handbag on the table. Caleb took the chair furthest from both of us. I looked directly at my daughter-in-law. "Savannah, let's clear up any confusion. The hotel owner whose room you just demanded be cancelled?" I said, my voice quiet but carrying in the small space. "Is me." Her smile flickered for less than a second. A lesser person might have stammered, apologized. Savannah simply regrouped. The shift was almost impressive, from stunned to pragmatic in 2 seconds flat. "Margot, there's been a simple misunderstanding," she said, her voice smooth as glass. "Just a mix-up with the room coordination for our family." I let the silence sit for a moment. "It wasn't coordination. Savannah?" I finally replied. "It was appropriation. You attempted to take something that was not yours, without authorization, from an employee who does not report to you." She stiffened. She was not used to being corrected. She deployed her primary weapon, her family's perceived status. "My family is very influential in this state," she said, leaning forward slightly, a conspiratorial smile playing on her lips. "Having them stay here, having them see your little business. It would be excellent publicity for you." I did not smile back. "This little business, as you call it, generates 3 times Caleb's annual salary every single month. I am not in need of publicity. Savannah? And I am certainly not in need of the kind that begins with disrespecting my staff and my home." The color rose in her cheeks. Caleb shifted in his chair, finally speaking. "Mom, look, this is just, it's a scheduling thing," he said, rubbing his face. "We can do this another weekend. We can reschedule." "Reschedule what, Caleb?" I asked, keeping my eyes on him. "This weekend, or the 5 other guests Savannah invited." His eyes shot to Savannah, a flash of panic. He had revealed it, the lie of omission. "5. I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The presidential suite, which I booked for you, sleeps 2. My room sleeps 2. Where, exactly? Were you planning to put 5 other people?" Savannah cut him off. "My parents, my sister, and her husband, and my uncle. They were driving up to join us." The audacity of it was breathtaking. She had not just tried to take my room. She had planned to annex my entire hotel for her family, demoting me from owner to innkeeper in my own home, all without a single conversation. I turned my full attention back to my son. His gaze fell back to the table. "Caleb," I said, and my voice was softer now, but heavier. "You confirmed with me. I'll be there. Mom." Those were your words. From the moment you sent that email to the moment Savannah made that phone call. This change of plans. "When were you going to tell me?" I leaned forward. "Were you going to tell me at all? Or was I just supposed to find out when their suitcases were sitting in my room?" He had no answer. He just stared at the wood grain of the table, a prisoner in a life he had allowed to be built around him. Caleb's silence was a living thing in the room. It was as familiar to me as his childhood laugh, but this version was cold, heavy, and coated in fear. "This isn't just about a room. Caleb?" I said, my voice low. "This is about your silence, the dinners, the holidays, the years of you standing by, 3 steps behind, while your wife and her family treated me like a polite inconvenience." I looked at him, willing him to meet my eyes. He would not. "Do you remember your own engagement party?" I asked. A flicker of tension crossed his face. He remembered. "Your mother-in-law, Melissa, spent 10 minutes talking to me before she mistook me for a member of the catering staff. She asked me, right in front of her friends, if I had managed to complete high school, or if this sort of work was all I was qualified for." I paused, letting the memory fill the space. "And you, my son, you heard her? You laughed, a little, nervous laugh, and said, 'Mum, you're so funny.' And you steered her away. You never corrected her. You never defended me. You just managed the situation, left me standing there by the champagne fountain, reduced to a punchline." "I'm just trying to keep the peace," Caleb mumbled, finally looking up. His eyes were desperate. "I am trying to stay neutral." Neutral. I shook my head, a small, sad motion. There is no neutral when you watch someone being disrespected. Caleb, normalizing contempt by calling it frankness is not neutrality. It's complicity. It is agreement by silence. "She's difficult." "Okay." The words burst out of him, loud in the small room. He looked at Savannah, then quickly away. "She's difficult, Mum. She gets an idea in her head, and if anyone pushes back, it's just easier to go along with her than to face the fallout. It's easier." "So you appease her," I said. "You call it balance to keep your house calm. But that isn't balance. Son, balance is a 2-sided scale. What you are describing is a seesaw, with you sitting on her side to keep it from moving. That is surrender. You've just painted it in a more comfortable color." Suddenly, Savannah spoke. Her voice was sharp. A weapon. "You're one to talk about family, about what's easier. You sold the house he grew up in, the house full of his father's memories. You sold it all on your own, without even consulting him. All for this vanity project." The attack was meant to wound, to paint me as the selfish one, the one who had abandoned them. It was a good move, but it was based on a lie. I turned to her, and all the anger I felt moments ago was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. "My husband died in that house. Savannah?" I said. My voice did not waver. "He had his stroke, and he fell. Right in our bedroom, right in front of me. After the funeral, I could not sleep in that room. I slept on the living room sofa for 6 months. That house was not a home anymore. It was a locket with a dead man's picture, and I was wearing it around my neck until it choked me." I leaned forward. Selling that house was not a vanity project. It was an act of survival. I built this place so I could breathe again. I watched her face. The smugness, the steel. It all wavered. It was just for a second. A tiny, almost imperceptible crack in her armor. It was the first time I had ever seen the person behind the performance, and she looked startled. She looked, for a fleeting moment, like she had just been struck. Savannah recovered from the shock of my admission in an instant. The vulnerability was gone, sealed back behind the steel. She pulled out her phone, her thumb tapping rapidly on the glass, her face hardening. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice flat and cold. She did not look up from the screen. "Your hotel's own website shows 7 available rooms, a king, multiple queens, and a junior suite. We only need 5. She turned the phone around, holding it up as if it were irrefutable evidence against me, as if I were a difficult employee she was about to fire. I smiled. It was a small, tight smile. "Ah, yes. That was true 10 minutes ago. When I went upstairs to my office, I logged into the reservation terminal." I paused, letting her process it. "I closed the inventory. Seaglass Haven is now officially, completely sold out for the weekend. We have no rooms." Her head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "You what?" "I closed the inventory," I repeated, enunciating every word. "I took every available room offline." Caleb, who had been silent, looked completely lost. "But Mom, if the rooms are empty, I do not understand. The rooms are not available." "Caleb," I clarified, shifting my gaze to him. "They are physically here. They are clean. They are empty. And they are ready. But they are not available to anyone. My revenue strategy has now become a moral barrier." I turned back to Savannah. "These rooms are no longer for sale to anyone who believes they can call my front desk, bully my staff, and demand the owner be evicted from her own suite." She looked at me, her face a mask of disbelief that quickly curdled into rage. "That is the most petty, childish, vindictive abuse of power I have ever witnessed." "Is it?" I asked, my voice genuinely curious. "I call it the right of ownership. I have a responsibility to 2 groups of people. Savannah, first, to my paying guests, who are here for peace and respect. Second, to my staff, who deserve to work in an environment free of harassment. You threatened both the moment you made that call. You are not a customer. You are family attempting a hostile takeover. And the answer is no." "This is a personal vendetta," she hissed. "It is a personal boundary," I corrected, just as calmly. She tried a different tactic, forcing a long, theatrical sigh, as if she were dealing with a confused, senile old woman. "Look, Margot, clearly, you are emotional. That's fine. There is a very simple solution to all of this. We will take the presidential suite, and we will take your room. My family will take the other rooms. And you," she said, with a dismissive wave of her hand, "can check into the Tidecrest Lodge across town. We will even pay for it. Just send Caleb the bill." The proposal hung in the air, the sheer, stunning audacity of it. The suggestion that I, the owner, be displaced, that I should be the one to pack my bag and leave, exiled from my own home, so her family could hold court in my absence. I let the silence in the room stretch until it was taut. No. It was just one word. It was not loud, but it was final. It was a locked door. "No," she repeated, her voice rising in disbelief. "No. I will not be leaving my hotel. I will not be accommodating your ambush. And you will not be taking my room. This weekend was never intended to be a stage for your family's performance. This weekend was an invitation I sent to my son. It was supposed to be about healing. It was supposed to be about us. Caleb. About remembering what a family is supposed to feel like, not faking a version of it to suit your wife's agenda." I looked at Caleb. He was pale, his eyes darting between us. He was a man trapped in a crossfire he had allowed to continue for years. Savannah saw him wavering. She reached across the table, placing her hand on his arm, her red nails digging slightly into his sleeve. "Caleb, this is absurd. Tell her." And then it happened. The smallest movement, but it shifted the foundation of the entire room. Caleb looked at her hand on his arm. He stared at it. And then, slowly, deliberately, he pulled his arm away. He slid it off the table, breaking her physical hold. "Savannah," he said, his voice rough. "Stop. Just stop." He turned to me, his eyes filled with a desperate, drowning kind of clarity. "Mom, can you give me just 1 minute alone?" The fury on Savannah's face was immediate and terrifying. To be dismissed. By him? In front of me? "Caleb?" she began, the warning sharp in her voice. 1 minute, he insisted, his voice stronger this time. "Please, go wait in the lobby." She stood so abruptly, her chair scraped loudly against the floor. She grabbed her purse from the table. She did not look at me, but she threw a look of pure venom at Caleb. She walked to the door. The sharp, angry sound of her heels striking the hardwood floor was the only sound. A rhythmic tapping that sounded like a clock counting down to an explosion. The door shut behind her. A moment later, the meeting room door opened slightly from the other side. It was Noah. He said nothing. He simply, quietly, placed the silver coffee carafe on the sideboard, added 3 more clean cups, and a small pitcher of cream. He had prepared the room not just for a meeting, but for a war. He met my eyes, nodded once, and disappeared, closing the door softly. I was alone with my son. The door latch clicked shut, and the silence that descended was heavier than the one before. Caleb slumped in his chair, the manufactured anger gone, leaving a vacuum. He looked like a man who had been holding his breath for a decade. "She didn't know you were here," he whispered, as if that explained anything. "It doesn't matter." "Caleb?" I poured a cup of coffee. My hand was steady. I pushed it toward him. He ignored it. I had a promotion," he said, staring at the polished table. "Last year, partner track. It would have meant traveling, maybe twice a month, just a couple of days." He finally looked at me, and his eyes were hollow. "She cried. For 3 days. Mum. She said I was abandoning her. She said I was selfish, that I cared more about work than building our life. She said she'd be all alone." He let out a harsh, dry laugh. "Her parents lived 10 minutes away, so I turned it down. I told my boss my priorities had shifted. And that," I said, "is why she needed this weekend, to prove her control." He flinched. "It's not just that. It's the money." I waited. 6 months ago, I was checking our joint account. I had been putting money aside, a separate savings, for 6 years. Ever since I got my first big bonus. It was $48,000. He said the number like it was poison. And it was gone. All of it. "What did she say?" I asked, my voice flat. She'd hired a contractor. An emergency upgrade for the kitchen and the master bath. New counters, new fixtures. She said the house was embarrassing and that she couldn't live like that. When I confronted her, when I asked her why she didn't talk to me, why she took my money, she said I was attacking her, that I was ungrateful, that she was only trying to build a future for us. and that I was financially abusive for questioning her. Control, wrapped in the language of care, I said. She took your money, and in the end, you were the one who had to apologize. Because it's easier, as you said. He finally put his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. I don't know who I am anymore, Mum. I've spent so long just managing her, tiptoeing. I have a need to please, she calls it. That's what her therapist said. But it's not. I'm a coward. And I've erased myself to keep the peace. And there is no peace. There's just this. The door flew open, hitting the wall with a loud bang. Savannah was back, her face blotchy, her eyes wild with a different kind of fire. You, she shouted, pointing at me. This is what you do. You pull him into a corner and you poison him. You are a manipulator. You're trying to break up my marriage. I did not raise my voice. I did not move. I looked at this raging, terrified woman, and for the first time, I saw past the armor. That's a very powerful word. Savannah, I said. It's a good shield. Now let's put it down and talk about the truth. Why did you need my room? Not for your parents. Why did you personally need to take it from me? You don't know anything, she spat. You stand here in your perfect, little, precious hotel, judging everyone. I know that you tried to erase me. I'm asking you why. Because it has to be perfect. The admission ripped out of her, raw and uncontrolled. It all has to be perfect. My mother? Melissa. She's coming. And she looks at everything. She finds every flaw. She always compares. Always. Evelyn's husband just bought her a place in the city. Evelyn's mother-in-law is taking them to Europe. Evelyn. Her voice broke. The perfectly composed, iron-willed Savannah Pierce was gone. In her place was a trembling woman, and the tears streaming down her face now were not strategic. They were real. She whispered, her voice choking. I just wanted one weekend. One. Where I was in charge. Where everything was. Right. Where she couldn't find a single thing to criticize. She looked at me, her face a ruin of makeup and genuine pain. I don't know any other way to be good enough. There it was. The real, bleeding wound. I did not move to comfort her. I did not attack. I held her gaze, and I delivered the final, necessary cut. And so you give that pain to him, I said, motioning to Caleb, who was watching this, paralyzed. You are doing to my son the exact same thing your mother did to you. You are perpetuating the very cycle that is destroying you, and you are the only one who can make it stop. Savannah's confession hung in the room, a raw, ugly thing. I let the silence stretch, letting the weight of her admission settle on both of them. I did not soften. I did not comfort. I simply turned to the sideboard, picked up my phone, and scrolled through my contacts. Caleb and Savannah watched me, their separate, silent battles frozen by my movement. I pressed a name. Robert, I said, my voice crisp and professional. It's Margot Ellison. I listened for a moment. I'm well, thank you. Listen, I have an immediate and sensitive request. I need a block of rooms, 5 of them. For tonight? And tomorrow? I watched Savannah, who was now just staring at the table, her tears drying in streaks. I know you're at high occupancy. Robert, this is a family overflow situation that I cannot accommodate here. I'm sending them your way. I paused. Yes, the Tidecrest Lodge is perfect. I need you to honor a reasonable, professional rate. No gouging. I will personally cover any difference from your rack rate. They are the Pierce party. I listened again, then nodded. Thank you, Robert. You're a good man. I owe you one. I ended the call and placed my phone face down on the polished table. I looked at Savannah. She looked brittle, exhausted, and small. The Tidecrest Lodge, across the bay, I said. My friend Robert is the owner. He is holding 5 rooms for your family. They can check in under your name. Savannah looked up at me, her eyes clouded with confusion, as if she'd been expecting another attack. Let me be perfectly clear. I continued, my voice steady, leaving no room for misinterpretation. I am not doing this for you. I am not making nice or forgiving anything. I am doing this because you are standing at the edge of a cliff, and you are trapped in a cycle of pain that you are passing on to my son. I am giving you this solution to break that cycle, right now, to give you the mental space to handle your mother, so that you might, just possibly, have the clarity to start fixing yourself. Her chin trembled. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She swallowed. Hard. Thank you, she whispered. The words were choked, raw. It was the first honest, unvarnished word I had ever heard her speak. There was no spin, no sarcasm, just the sound of a drowning person grabbing a lifeline. It is not a gift, I said. It is a tool. Now, for the second part. I turned my full attention to Caleb. He looked pale, but he was no longer slumped. He was watching. This weekend was meant for you, for us. The presidential suite is yours. It is clean and ready. My room, I said, holding his gaze, is my room. Your wife's family is now, officially, handled. I looked from him to Savannah and back again. Here is the non-negotiable condition. The decision of whether you stay here tonight, in that suite, or whether you get back in that car, is yours. Yours, Caleb. It is not to be made under any emotional pressure, or guilt, or threat. Not from her. I glanced at Savannah's stricken face. And not from me. Caleb looked at his wife. He looked at me. He took a deep, shuddering breath. It felt like the first real one he'd taken in years. I want to stay, he said, his voice rough. Mom, I want to stay. I saw the relief flood Savannah's face, but it lasted only a second. But tonight? Caleb continued, and this time he looked directly at Savannah. I'm going to sleep on the couch, in the suite's living room. We need to talk. Savannah. Really talk. Tomorrow. But I can't. I need some space tonight. Just for tonight. I saw the terror flash in her eyes. This was new. This was a boundary he was setting. This distance, this physical space he was demanding, was the first step toward an exit, and she knew it. The fear of him leaving was, perhaps, finally stronger than the fear of her mother. She looked like she was going to argue, to cry, to deploy the arsenal. Instead, she just deflated. She nodded once, a tiny, jerky motion. A new line had been drawn, and for the first time, she had not tried to erase it. There was no hugging, no grand reconciliation. I gave Savannah the check-in details, and she left, alone, to go to the Tidecrest and manage the arrival of her family. Late that night, long after I had closed the books and the hotel was silent, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Savannah. I found a therapist. For me. And I'm looking for marriage counseling. For us. I stared at the words. It was a start, but apologies and promises were just another form of currency. I typed my reply. Do not turn your apologies into a tool. Do not ask for credit for fixing what you broke. Just do the work. There was no pink, hazy glow of reconciliation. There was no warm embrace. There was only the hard, cold demand for action. The weekend began. I walked Caleb to the presidential suite. He paused in the entryway. His shoulders slumped. He took the living room. He had said he would sleep on the couch. And he did. I did not argue. In the main sitting area, on the mantel, I had already placed a few small, framed photographs from storage. I did not do it to be cruel. I did it to remind him. One of them was old. The colour slightly faded Caleb, aged 12, perched on his father's shoulders. They were both laughing, sunburned, the wild Oregon surf exploding behind them. It was a picture of a time when joy was simple, when our family was whole. It was not an accusation. It was just a quiet, steady anchor, waiting for him to see it. That night, we did not go to a restaurant. We ate on my private terrace, a small table overlooking the dark ocean. The kitchen sent up grilled fish and vegetables. For the first hour, we did not talk about Savannah, or her mother, or the wreckage in the meeting room. We talked about the hotel. He asked me about the day-to-day, and this time, his interest was real. I told him about the suppliers, the cost of high thread count sheets, the absurdity of running a luxury business. I told him about the guest in room 4 who, just last week, complained that the ocean was too loud. He laughed. It was a real laugh, one I had not heard in years. It was rusty, but it was his. I told him about the long, wet winter, when the rain did not stop for weeks, and my booking projections were down 12%. And I told him about the 5-star review a couple left in March, a long, detailed letter about the warmth of the staff and the comfort of the rooms, and how that one review saved the morale of my entire team. It's hard work, Mum, he said, looking at the building. It's good work, I replied. The next morning, I found him in the lobby before sunrise, staring out the main doors. Walk, I asked. We left our shoes by the entrance and walked onto the wet, packed sand. The tide was out. The air was sharp and cold, tasting of salt and renewal. Dad used to love this, Caleb said, his voice quiet. He said the ocean reset his brain. I've been thinking about him, Caleb said, stopping to face the grey water. Thinking what he would have done. In my place. He was always so strong. I'm not. I turned to my son. The weak morning light showed the exhaustion etched around his eyes. You're wrong, I said. He wasn't strong. Caleb. He was clear. There is a difference. Your father's morals were his compass. He wasn't strong because he was loud or because he won every fight. He was strong because he knew, deep in his bones, where his no was, and he never, ever betrayed it. Not for convenience, not for peace. That clarity was his strength. Caleb looked down, digging his toes into the cold sand. I've been living on autopilot. For years. Just reacting, managing, trying to get through the day without an explosion. I don't even know where my no is anymore. Then you start over, I said, looking back at the sea glass haven. This place. This was me starting over. I was terrified. Caleb, signing those loan documents. My hand was shaking. I thought I would lose everything. But I knew one thing staying in that house, staying in that grief, meant I was already dead. I was a ghost. I decided if I was going to be terrified, I might as well be terrified while moving forward. We stood in that quiet, healing silence. And then, my coat pocket buzzed. I pulled out the phone. The caller ID read, Tide Crest Lodge. My stomach dropped. I answered. Robert. Margot. His voice was tight, professional, and furious. I am not running a psychiatric ward. You need to handle this. Caleb took a step closer, his face instantly pale. What's happened? I asked. Your daughter-in-law's mother. He snapped. Melissa. She's been hell on wheels since check-in, insulted my night auditor, demanded a discount because the sea air smelled wrong. And this morning, she told my breakfast hostess she was incompetent. Now, Savannah is in my garden, sobbing, and Melissa is holding court in the lobby. I'm about to call the police. Margot. Do not, I said. Put Savannah on the phone. I waited. Caleb was rigid beside me. What is it? What's she done now? A raw, choked voice came on the line. Hello? Savannah? I said. My voice was not soft. It was steel. It's Margot. You have 30 seconds. What is happening? I can't. She wept. She's awful. She's yelling at the staff. Listen to me. I interrupted, cutting through her panic. You have one job right now. You are going to walk into that lobby. You are going to stand in front of your mother. You are going to tell her that her behavior is unacceptable, and that if she says one more word of disrespect to any staff member at that lodge, she will leave. You will tell her. I can't, she whispered, a new, sharp note of terror in her voice. I can't. I'm scared. I looked at the vast, cold ocean. I looked at my son, who had spent a decade paying the price for that same fear. Every fear has a cost. Savannah, I said, my voice quiet, but lethal. You've been paying for your fear of your mother with Caleb's soul. You've been paying with your own integrity. You can be scared of your mother, or you can be scared of losing your husband and your entire life. Both choices have a price. It's time for you to choose which one pays for your own dignity. I hung up the phone. We walked back from the beach, the sand firm under our feet. Caleb said nothing. He went up to the presidential suite, closing the door quietly. He needed to process. I went to my office and watched the ocean, which had turned a flat, cold grey. An hour later, my phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Savannah. I did it. I walked back into the lobby. I told her, You will not disrespect the staff here. I told her Robert would call the police if she continued. I waited. A second text came through, the words tumbling out. She is screaming. She says I'm an ungrateful failure. She's threatening to call my father. She's comparing me to Evelyn. It's the storm. But I'm not backing down. I'm sitting in the car. I won't go back in. It was the first time in her life, I realized, she had ever chosen the storm over the surrender. It was the first time she had accepted the pain of her mother's wrath as the price for her own boundary. I did not text her praise. Praise was a reward. And this was not about me. This was about her own survival. I typed back 5 words. Good. Hold the line, I added after a beat. Learn to stand on your own feet. Later that day, Caleb found me. He had showered. He looked pale, but the deep, bone-weary exhaustion in his eyes had been replaced by a sharp, brittle clarity. "I just got off the phone," he said, his voice level. "I've booked a session. For us. Couples therapy. It's for this Tuesday. And Savannah. She's already scheduled her own individual intake. For tomorrow. She said she knows she has to." I nodded, absorbing this. "That's a start. Caleb?" I poured him a glass of water. "But you have to understand. You cannot go to therapy to save the marriage because you are afraid of being alone. You cannot fix this out of fear. It only works if you are both willing to tell the absolute truth. It only works if you are willing to rebuild it on respect, not on managing each other's trauma." "I know," he said. He looked past me, through the window, at the sharp line of the horizon. "I told her that. I told her that my relationship with you is not a variable. It is not something she gets to negotiate. It is a non-negotiable part of my life. She accepts that, or she doesn't. But I am done apologizing for having a mother." We sat in the quiet of the office, the late afternoon light flooding the room. We were two strategists planning for the day after Sunday. "If the therapy fails," I said, "if she reverts, if you find yourself tiptoeing again, what is the exit strategy?" He did not flinch. "Then I leave. But I leave consciously. I leave knowing I did everything I could to face the truth. I won't just disappear into her fog again. And if it succeeds, then we tear down the entire architecture," he said, his voice firm. "We don't patch this. We start over. From the ground up. A new foundation." That night, he stayed in the suite, on the sofa in the living room, as he had promised. The next morning, he met me for coffee. He looked rested. It was startling. "I slept," he said, a note of wonder in his voice. "For 8 solid hours. I don't think I've done that since the wedding. My whole body just let go." He was getting himself back, piece by piece. It was Sunday morning, the end of the weekend, the end of the truce. I came down to the lobby. The air was crisp. Noah was at the desk, his presence calm and reassuring. By the main door, waiting to be taken out, were 2 sets of luggage. Mine, from my owner's suite, and Caleb's, from the presidential. The atmosphere in the lobby was quiet, but it was not peaceful. It was the loaded silence of decision. The heart of the hotel, and the heart of my son, had both shifted into a final, decisive rhythm. Caleb and I were standing by the luggage, a silent, mutual decision to face what came next together. The lobby's glass doors opened, and Savannah walked in. She was alone. She was not the same woman from 2 days ago. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was scrubbed clean of its power makeup, and she wore simple slacks and a sweater. She carried no designer bag. She looked tired, young, and terrified. She stopped when she saw us. "They're coming," she said, her voice low, pitching it just for us. "My mother, my aunt, Evelyn, they're leaving the Tidecrest. They're coming here to fix this, to pressure me to demand the rooms. I told them no. They didn't listen." As if summoned, a black luxury sedan pulled up to the curb, followed by another. The lobby doors opened again. This time, it was Melissa, flanked by a woman I assumed was her sister, and a younger woman with Savannah's features, but a harder, colder expression, Evelyn. Melissa stopped, her eyes sweeping the lobby with profound disdain. This is it. This is the place. It's small. Noah, standing tall behind the desk, said nothing. Melissa marched directly to the desk, ignoring us completely. You, she said to Noah. We need 5 rooms, immediately. The best ones. The ones my daughter was too incompetent to secure. Savannah, who had been frozen, stepped forward. Her whole body was trembling. She swallowed. A dry, audible click. No, she said. Melissa turned slowly. What did you say? No, Savannah repeated, her voice shaking but present. There are no rooms, and you will not insult the staff here. Melissa's laugh was a cold, sharp, ugly sound. Oh, darling, you're a failure. You've always been a failure. You can't even book a hotel room. Evelyn would have had this handled in 5 minutes. You are a hopeless, spoiled child. Savannah's hand, by her side, was shaking so hard I could see it. But she did not back down. She did not cry. She just held her mother's gaze. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch Noah's eye. Noah, I said, my voice quiet. It's time. He understood instantly. He stood up, stepped out from behind the desk, and faced Melissa. He was calm, professional, and completely in command. Ma'am, he said, his voice ringing with quiet authority. We require that you please respect our staff. Follow me. He did not wait for her. He turned and walked to the meeting room, the one he had prepared. He held the door. Melissa, stunned into momentary silence by the audacity of an employee, actually followed. Her family trailed behind her. Noah held the door for me, for Caleb, and for Savannah. We walked in last. The room was as we had left it, but on the center of the table, Noah had placed 3 things in a neat stack, a copy of the Seaglass Haven Service Bill of Rights, our official incident policy, and, on the very top, the original printout of Savannah's phone call from 2 days ago, the one he had logged, guest request, cancel mother-in-law's reservation. It was cold, hard, documented proof. I walked to the head of the table. I placed my hand flat on that stack of paper. This is not a public space, Melissa, I said, my voice as calm as the ocean. This is a private business, and in this house we have laws. The first is that we treat staff with respect. The moment you break that law, you are asked to leave. The second law is that my room is not for taking. I looked at Caleb. I looked at Savannah. The final play was theirs. Caleb turned to his wife. His voice was not angry. It was clear. Savannah, I will go to therapy with you on Tuesday. I will do the work. But I am telling you now, in front of everyone, the final decision, whether this marriage ends or whether it begins again, will be my decision. It will not be made out of fear or habit or pressure. Do you understand that Savannah did not look at her mother? She did not cry for his forgiveness. She just looked at her husband, perhaps for the first time, as an equal. Yes, she said. I understand. That was the moment, the final knot. In front of both our families, Caleb made his choice. He reached over, not for Savannah's hand, but for his luggage. I'm staying here, Mum, for the rest of the weekend, as planned. Savannah watched him. Then she nodded. A quick, painful acceptance. She turned, alone, and walked past her mother, toward the door. As she did, She pulled out her phone and I saw her type one short text to Melissa, who was gaping in outrage. The text read, "Anyone who disrespects the staff leaves." The meeting room door shut, clicking softly into place, locking the rage inside. In the sudden quiet, the sound of the waves outside the lobby windows, the sound of my home, seemed to grow louder, clearer. I looked at Noah, who was already clearing the coffee cups. "Thank you, Noah," I said. He paused, a small, knowing smile on his face. "We protect our home. Margot." I walked out of the room. Caleb was waiting for me. He did not say a word. He just offered me his hand. I took it. We walked together, out of the lobby and onto the main balcony, the salt air hitting our faces. We did not cry. We did not cheer. We just stood there, side by side. Two people who had finally, firmly, stood their ground in their own home. Thank you for listening to this story. Please comment below with where you're listening from. Let's connect and share our thoughts. We invite you to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and support us further by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.